The game view over here is what the camera sees. So while over here we've been kind of moving around throughout our scene, uh, nothing's been happening over here. This is what the camera sees. And if I select the camera and go up here to Game Object, and I say Align View to Selected, this is now going to make the view of my scene view camera match the view, look out of the forward direction of the object, the camera. So this is going to show me exactly the same view in the scene view as in the game view. The game view, incidentally, is what we see when we play the game. So often I want to set the camera view in some way. And one easy way to do this is to align it the way you want in the scene view. Go back and select the camera. And this time under Game Object, align it to the view. And so now the camera is now aligned to the view of the camera in the scene. Or the camera is aligned to the view in the scene view. And of course, I can manipulate the camera myself. I can change its x-axis, and this changes what I see. Or I can change its y-axis, or I can change its z-axis, which kind of rotates it around that forward vector that's pointing out of the camera. We'll talk a lot more about cameras later. In the game view, there's also an aspect ratio setting. So this is free aspect, which will adapt to whatever my screen is when I play this. Whoops, all compiler errors. This is a compiler error that comes in 219 with the standard assets, and the solution is just to delete the offending script. Delete the offending script. These are utility scripts that we don't use very much, so deleting them doesn't matter. So in the game view, I can maximize on play. This means when I play, the game view will occupy the entire editor. Or I can leave this unclicked, in which case the game view will stay unchanged. Doesn't show you very much since it's not changing. As we design for other hardware, things like phones or tablets, these will have different aspect ratios, and we may want to see what our screen is going to look like with a particular aspect ratio. So there's a 5:4, here's a 4:3. There are others, and I think you can actually add your own custom aspect ratio if you want to. I'm going to leave it at free aspect because it's easier that way. So you saw with the gizmos, we had a gizmo for the light over here in the scene view. I don't see the gizmos in the game view unless I want to. By turning this gizmo button on, I will then see gizmos. Later, when we do things with debugging lines and debugging rays, this will be a useful tool. And there's also the stats, which shows you basically what kind of resources your game is using. It tells you things about the CPU, it tells you about the frame rate, it tells you how many triangles and vertices you're displaying. It tells me what the screen resolution is, and all of this when we're playing the game doesn't do much here. Let me do a little trick here and put a rigid body on my cube, and I think I have a physics material, bouncy, that I will put in the cube's collider. put in the cube's collider. And so now when I play, that little cube is going to bounce around. And this is showing me the frame rate, which is, off the charts here. Oops, it fell off the plane. So the stats are a good thing to look at to see kind of how well your game is playing. When you get a big, complicated world, it can get, the frame rate can lag down, particularly on weaker hardware. Almost done here. An important concept that we'll use a lot is parenting objects. So I'm going to make another object here, a sphere. Let me reset it. And I'll drag it up in the world here a little bit. And move it over here. And the sphere and the cube are two separate objects. They all line up here in the hierarchy. And the cube has a rigid body on it, so it's going to fall and bounce around. But this sphere doesn't, so it stays immobile. If I take the sphere and I drag it onto the cube, it now becomes a child of the cube. The cube is the parent, and the sphere is its child. And watch what happens when I play it now. The sphere is now locked to the cube. It's become, in a sense, kind of a part of the cube. And actually, if you look at where that gizmo is that we use to move the things around, it's no longer in the center of the cube. It's now halfway between the cube and the sphere. And this is where this center thing comes in. You can, the center of the whole object or the pivot of the parent object. That's what pivot and center are for. And the sphere, its transform is relative to its parent. So if I reset this, it goes to the center of my cube. If I move it up in the Y direction, it moves out and along the Y axis of the cube. And if I scale the cube, the sphere scales along with it. Even though the sphere's transform scale is still 1, 1, 1, because I've made the cube bigger, the sphere has gotten bigger as well. Let me put that back to where it was. Put it back to 1, 1, 1. Oops, 1. This, you can make kind of interesting objects here. Our cube and our sphere are kind of a little character that we could think of making a player out of now. It has a body and a head. And so we've made this little character by parenting, or by making the sphere the child of the cube. I think I'm almost done. I think that might be it. So, all right, we get done with all of this stuff. We've made a bunch of changes here. I'm gonna save it as, I'm gonna pick a folder where I wanna put it. I'll put it in the scenes folder, and I'll give it a name, first day test. Boom. One other thing I'd like to mention before I go here, if I look in this game folder, where am I here? I look in this game folder that I'm working in. This is first day project. Here's the assets. And look what's in the assets. There's a material folder, a scene folder, and a standard assets folder, just like there's a material, scenes, and standard assets. And in the scenes, there's a first day test and there's the sample scene. Just like in the scenes, there's a first day test and a sample scene. So the folder structure that we have for our project is the same as the folder structure that we see here in the asset view. You remember I said that the first time you load a scene, it takes a long time. And that's because it has to populate the library, which is kind of the compiled version of all of the stuff that we've got in our game. And it also populates this temp file that has a whole bunch of stuff in it. We never do anything in the library, the logs, the packages, the project view, or the temp. We never touch any of them. We can touch things in here. You can add things to these folders, and when you load your game, things will appear there. I don't recommend it. I recommend adding things through the game engine, not through the folder. And that's because of these meta files, these files that you see here that contain information about what's in the scenes. And that all relates to the information that's in this library of pre-compiled, already imported stuff. So I think that's plenty. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to end screen sharing and I'm going to end recording. And so I'll see you all in class. This has been a long lecture, but this should do us for a couple days. See you in class. Bye.